And we are here, the three cats, Mahara Cat, Bethesda Cat, and Rosie Cat. We're here together to do a presentation and honoring, really, like we did of John F. Kennedy for Martin Luther King Jr., since today is the anniversary of his birth. Actually, he was born in 1929 as Michael King Jr. I'm not sure where Martin came in, or the Luther, but anyway, that was 92 years ago that he was born. And he died 53 years ago of a gunshot wound in 1968 in Memphis, Tennessee. But before we really go into that, I just want to acknowledge Mahara Cat. We've had over 2,200 views on your last cat chat, which was an interview that you did with Santa Fe attorney Anna Garner, and it was about her major federal lawsuit filed against our New Mexico Governor Michelle Lujan Grisham for unlawful lockdowns and mandates because of a pandemic based on fictitious science. So I just wanted to congratulate you, Mahara, on that,
Yeah.
as well as to say happy birthday. I'm going to do that too. So
Yeah, that was great. That was
yeah,
a great interview, and going to be doing another one very shortly with her.
good. So if
Great.
anybody hasn't seen that interview, it's only a half hour long. It's very well done and very informative and very helpful, very calming in a certain way too.
Yeah, I agree.
So today, again, we're honoring Martin Luther King Jr. Because it was the day that he was born, and they made it, whoever they are, a U.S. federal holiday for Martin Luther King in 1986. That was only 35 years ago. Took them a while to get that together, but as Wikipedia on my computer had to say about Martin Luther King Jr., because I know a lot about him, but I didn't know a lot about him. So this is what Wikipedia has to say, and then we're going to roll into it with Bethesda and Mahara. Martin Luther King Jr. was an American Baptist minister and activist who became the most visible spokesperson and leader in the civil rights movement from 1955 until his assassination in 1968. And King is best known for advancing civil rights through nonviolence and civil disobedience, inspired by his Christian beliefs and the nonviolent activism of Mahatma Gandhi. What do you say, Mahara Cat? Is that a pretty accurate description, do you think, even though it came from Wikipedia? From what you know? Oh, we can't hear you.
Sorry, I muted myself.
Okay.
That's an accurate basic description, yes. And Martin Luther King, I believe, was assassinated by the same people that assassinated JFK.
Little did I know. I mean, I found out that 2 months later, Robert Kennedy was also assassinated after Martin Luther King, just 2 months.
Yes, same group of people did all of them. They were all a threat to the established order of things. I would say, just as our current president is. So Martin Luther King, as Wikipedia said, he espoused Mahatma Gandhi. He was for nonviolence. He was a Christian man and pro-life. So everything that is BLM, Black Lives Matter, stands for now is in direct opposition, in my opinion, to what Martin Luther King stood for. So I think that is a very, very interesting how everything has been twisted to suit the powers that be, who have always wanted to keep the racial divide going.
I would ditto that. And one of the quotes that I have here from the website that I got these quotes from, 13 of them. Darkness cannot drive out darkness. Only light can do that. Hate cannot drive out hate. Only love can do that. That was one of the very poetic quotes of Martin Luther King. Bethesda, what do you have to say at this point in time?
Well, I think it's very interesting that we're talking about the Capitol in DC right now in regards to Trump, and that now with MLK, we're talking about his march to the Capitol in Alabama, and voting rights and freedom. And we're talking the exact same things right now. And MLK was probably rolling in his grave because we have lost our voter rights. You know, everything he worked for so vigilantly, and all his supporters, and also this, you know, the women, the suffragettes, you know, women have lost their vote. Like 80 million of us essentially have kind of lost our vote with these Dominion voting machines and all the voter fraud. So, and another thing I wanted to say, it's like I read that there was a visceral hatred for MLK during his day based on misinformation and surveillance. So the exact same pattern has repeated itself. There is a visceral hatred now for our president, and a lot of it was based on misinformation coming from our MSM. And now with the Obamagate coming out, we're finding out that he was surveilled probably to the same degree as MLK. And I would say that Trump is probably very lucky he is still alive, because freedom fighters all over the world, all over America, are, you know, repeatedly taken out. And that's what it's about, is freedom. You know, Trump stands for freedom, and MLK stood for freedom, and John F. Kennedy and many of the people that have been assassinated stood for freedom. So it's repeating itself again. And hopefully this time we're going to pull through. But it's interesting. You know, we're talking about MLK right now, when you know, there's a Capitol March, the freedom, voting rights, and it's just repeating itself. It's not about color; it's about freedom. You know, the deep state doesn't like freedom. That's what they're about.
How about you, Maharakat? Do you want to follow that?
I totally agree. And I was thinking the same thing. The march on the Capitol was so uncannily similar. It just happened to be Trump supporters who are marching against the injustice of this stolen, rigged vote. One of Martin Luther King's quotes is, "Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere."
Yeah.
And Donald Trump talked about walking peacefully to the Capitol to deliver a message. And there's so much similarity. There's another quote from King that I just wanted to throw in here because it fits so well. He said, "But God is interested in the freedom of the whole human race, the creation of a society where all men will live together as brothers, and every man will respect the dignity and worth of human personality." Now, of course, that includes women. Just the fact that he says man, that is the way it was said back then, man included women. So, but that's what it's about. It's nothing to do with the color of the skin. It's to do with what lies under the skin, what lies in the heart.
Yeah, and like now in 1962, the FBI saw Martin Luther King as a serious threat to the nation. And that's what we keep hearing about Trump, that he is a threat to our peace. He is a threat to our equality. He is a threat to women. So it's almost like they have the same template they keep using over and over every century, because there's very many similarities between how the nation felt about MLK at the time and how the nation, and I mean the FBI, feels about Trump now. And I would agree with that. I think that they both stood for freedom, and that's a direct threat to the FBI.
Very interesting that we have these parallels going on right now.
Yeah.
Again, back to a little bit more about Martin Luther King. He's probably very well known for his I Have a Dream speech and his March on Washington. They kind of dovetailed. They happened together on the same day. The March on Washington was for jobs and freedom. It was a peaceful political rally. It's really quite cool to, look at old footage to see all the people lined up at the Washington Monument for that day. And Martin Luther King, in his I Have a Dream speech, he didn't even work that phrase into his speech. Instead, it was a gospel singer, a woman, who yelled out to him when he was in the middle of his speech, "Hey, what about the dream?" And then he just picked up from that and wove in this beautiful tapestry of a speech using I have a dream statement. And it was all, the rest of his speech was all spontaneous and all done off the cuff. Of course, he was a pastor who was well known for his poetry, for his I can't pronounce that word. Anyway, he was well known for delivering very beautiful speeches. So I think it was very interesting that that came into his speech. And again, he emphasized freedom for sure, and that when we could unite in peace in times of conflict and justice, that's when he saw that he declared that he saw the promised land, and that one day the world would reach that promised land. He said that again in a speech the night before he was killed. And that night also, he said that he was not at all afraid because he had seen the promised land. Well, I would garner to say that we are in that time. We have arrived at that time, and it is time now to reclaim justice, truth, love, authority, peace, unity here on earth. And a little bit longer, we got to hang in there. We might need to call on energies like Martin Luther King, who was so dedicated and so loyal to his mission to help each of us individually and collectively through this very small eye of the needle that we're going through right now. But again, anything that either one of you want to say about that, about bringing in I Have a Dream speech and Martin Luther King's dream for equality for all beings, not just for Black Americans and not just for women, but for all beings, I certainly invite you both to do that. I know I've been told before, okay, you first, Maharakat. Okay, I'm going to say that. You first, Maharakat.
Okay, well, I truly believe that President Donald Trump is of the same mind and heart as Martin Luther King. And Martin Luther King's niece, Alaveda King, also believes that and is a firm supporter of Donald Trump. Trump, before he ran for president, was immensely popular among Black people in general. He had very close Black friends and still does, but lost many of them as soon as he ran for president. Something happened. Yeah, everybody flipped against him. The man, had not changed in his very un-racist, inclusive point of view. In fact, Donald Trump has done more for Black people than any president so far, creating the community development zones in inner cities, funding, which Black Lives Matter immediately started to destroy with their riots. They destroyed more Black businesses than any others. Donald Trump is also he has supported Black colleges in an unprecedented way. He advocated the First Step Act, brought it to the table,
Mm.
pushed it through, which has been immensely beneficial for Black prisoners who are getting a second chance. So I do believe that Martin Luther King would be rolling in his grave to see what Black Lives Matter have been doing, because it's nothing to do with Martin's message. And I think he would, as Alaveda has said, support Trump. And Candace Owens, just one last thing, and then Bethesda, you can put your 2 cents in, but I want to just read a quick little thing from Candace Owens, who is a remarkable young Black woman who's come to the fore to tell the truth about Black people in the Democratic Party. She is a poster child for growing up poor, in an abusive situation, dirt poor, and making her own way, and she's eloquent, she's educated, she's an amazing, amazing young woman. She says, the dirty little secret about wokeness is its lack of diversity. It's a movement entirely comprising of white, college-educated progressives, which is why Democrats are nervous about President Trump's embryonic popularity with the African Americans after he won just 8% of the Black vote in 2016. So, because, as she said, the Democratic Party needs the Black vote. They've been manipulating Black people for decades. Hillary Rodham Clinton was, her mentor was one of the KKK leaders, Robert Byrd, and she idolized him. So, the Democrats have been keeping Black people on the plantation, as Candace Owens liked to say, and she started the Blexit movement to educate Black people and get them off the plantation finally and thinking for themselves. And supporting our president, who has done more for Black people, as I said, than any other president.
Well, that will raise some eyebrows. It's good that you got
That's
your
great, Mara.
Yeah, and of course, they're going to say, and I've seen that they've already said, oh, well, that Robert Byrd, that photo of Hillary Clinton kissing Robert Byrd is a fake. Well, it's not, and it never was. You dig into him, he was a member of the KKK, very, very racist man, as is Hillary Rodham Clinton.
All right, Bethesda, it's your turn.
Yeah, I would reiterate that in my interviews with people, with my experience talking to people and my social media, that it's the left is distinctly relating to Black people as victims, and that the right, in my experience, is holding them up as equals. Even when you see Trump interact with Black people, it's on an equal basis. Whereas I've seen a lot of the left will talk down, and I've even been with someone in the same room, and there's Black conservative YouTube channels now, and I watch 3 or 4 or 5, and there's Terrence, who's a comedian. There's a lot of Black conservatives coming out, and they're all saying the same thing. The left wants to disempower them and make them victims, whereas the right is holding them up as equals. And I've had someone on the left watching a Black conservative and talking about Trump, and the attitude is, well, they don't really know what they're talking about. And to me, that's jaw-dropping. It is jaw-dropping. I said, they don't know about their own people, their own relatives, their own friends, their own, and that the attitude is no. So the innate racism is so clear. and that whole behavior that, well, yeah, Black people can, create conservative posts and, like Candace Owen, but they really don't know what they're talking about. They're really not smart enough to know what's good for them. Is a lot of the underlying message I hear repeatedly from the left, and it's just astonishing to me that other people don't see it. That disparity between we're all for Black people, but they also treat them like basically, and I see some of the celebrities like Jennifer Aniston, and there was another woman that, and Joe Biden himself, you ain't Black, if you don't vote for me. It's just this ongoing brutally racist statements that just seem to go by a lot of people on the left. Whereas I'm like, did he just say that? Did he really just say that? And, Joe Biden coming out, and the only person he allowed interview was Cardi B, and which is sort of, she's a very sexualized Black dancer, musician, and Candace Owen even come out and and said to Cardi B, they don't really respect you. He's interviewing you because you have 10 million followers or whatever that is. He thinks you're stupid, Cardi B. That's what Candace Owen says. So she's on the same wavelength. Like, they're getting treated like they're stupid, and they need to be controlled, and they need to be on food stamps. So I would say that Martin Luther King, yes, he would be rolling in his grave if he saw what was happening on the left. And it's all an illusion, in my perspective. It's not about racism whatsoever. It's about that we're promoting freedom for humanity. And that really goes against the grain of the deep state, because control is what they feed on. So yeah, I think MLK and Donald Trump were of the same soul group for sure.
And control through the racial divide. They love
The
that
sexual
one.
divide, the women, and right
The
down
whole
the
thing
line.
about systemic racism in America, I mean, really, of course, there are little pockets everywhere. There's
Right.
bad eggs everywhere. But when you look at it overall, I mean, Black people are successful in many, many areas. There's all kinds of, they can, if they choose to, make it, but the way they've kept them down through and this is something that Candace Owens really points out, by promoting single motherhood, by giving single Black mothers money when they're single. So it's more lucrative for them to be single than to have the father living in the home. That's
Yeah.
one of the ways they've created the crime rate among Black people, because the kids are growing up without fathers. And the other thing that I think I just want to point out, because this is major, is the abortion issue. The whole Planned Parenthood, from my research now, I see it was started by Margaret Sanger, who was a eugenist, meaning a white supremacist, someone who thought that dark races were inferior. So Planned Parenthood was started as a genocide against Black people. And there have been more Black babies aborted than any other. And this whole promotion of abortion by the left is the absolute antithesis of anything Martin Luther King stood for. Another thing he would be horrified by. And many Black people are horrified by it. That's why so many are going now to support Trump, because killing babies and killing Black babies is not okay.
Yeah, I'll never forget one of the Trump rallies. One of the first ones I went to, there was a large number of Navajo people there, and people of all, colors. It's very integrated. And they had a sign, white liberals other races. And they know too, it's not just the Black, it's, many different people of color, or whatever you want to call it, are aware that there's a great hypocrisy going on. So when I was just looking a little bit about information about MLK before we met, I was going through, like you, the Wikipedia, and one thing that I really wanted to mention that I just thought was horrifying, at the bottom of one of the little entries about him was a mask with one of his sayings on it. And I was like, that has got to be the grossest, one of the grossest, one of his very famous sayings was on a mask. So they're even, trying to use him as a Black person. They're using Black people. They're using MLK now to promote enslavement. That's what I saw when I saw that mask. They're using him to promote enslavement of humanity.
Well, I would say the beauty of Cat Chats is both we have the opportunity to not only inform each other, but all of you who care to listen, of that which is out of balance, that which is twisted, that which is that needs and is beckoning for exposure, along with also bringing in the energy of unification, the energy of peace and justice. We do go there. Does either one of you have anything that you want to say about that? Otherwise, I'll wrap up with 3 quotes that I think are just, all of Martin Luther King Jr.'s quotes are great, but these last 3 I really like. But I want to throw it back to you, Mahara, if you have anything in, okay, you've done enough exposure. Now on the other side of that, like, how can we pull the energy in of Martin Luther King Jr. at this time to, have a victory, call it that?
Well, I believe justice is going to be the victory. Right now, the situation in the country looks dire if you're looking at mainstream media, but there's a lot going on behind the scenes. And I do believe very, very strongly in my heart and from what I see that justice is going to prevail. This election we've just gone through will not be allowed to stand, because that is one of the most gross injustices of all, taking away a person's right to have a say, meaning have a vote. Also, we are being so heavily censored by social media. That is an enormous injustice that I do believe is going to be righted. And President Trump has said many times, our movement is about the rule of law and justice. So he tends to keep his promises, and I believe we are going to come very soon into a new society that will be a just society, and a society like nothing we have yet seen. It's very exciting times.
Yeah, I would agree. I think, from a spiritual point of view, we're into the age of Aquarius, shamanically, I feel Mother Earth rising, unfolding, wanting to evolve, and which means her children will also evolve. Mystic revelations and the mind's true liberation. I think we have reached a time of where the pendulum is going to swing in the other direction. And as Mahara, I believe I call it Paradise Earth. He has seen the future, and I think it's now. And I think we are going to find our freedom and find justice. And I'm very, very optimistic and positive right now, despite what's going on.
I want to say alleluia to all of that. And certainly Martin Luther King Jr. Definitely stood for justice. There's no question about that. One of his quotes, the ultimate measure of a man and a woman is not where she stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where she stands at times of challenge and controversy. And then you probably will recognize this quote, I have decided to stick with love. Hate is too great. Hate is too great of a burden for me to bear. And then be a bush if you can't be a tree. If you can't be a highway, just be a trail. If you can't be a sun, be a star. For it isn't by size that you win or fall or fail, but be the best of whatever you are. And life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? So happy birthday, Mahara. Happy Martin Luther King Day, and happy. Yep, we're moving into happier times.
One more quote that I love. Our
Okay.
lives begin to end the day we become silent about things that matter.
That is beautiful.
And may the spirit and dream of Martin Luther King be with us through this great transition.